Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Welcome. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Jimmy Carter said, "I have one life and one chance to make it count for something. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I am, whenever I can, for as long as I can, with whatever I have to try to make a difference." Well, on today's episode, we talk about making a difference in the world and making goodness our business. Our guest has over 20 years of experience in strategic marketing, sales, and general business management. He's worked with a diverse range of companies in the consumer packaged goods sector, including Zarbee's Naturals, Phillips Consumer Lifestyle, Nice Pack Products, and Gillette. Please welcome the CEO of Canidae Pet Food, Bret Furio. Bret, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to dive into this conversation. So let's get right to it. I would love it if you would take us back a bit to where your story begins. And let's go back to a point in your youth where you had a sense of what you wanted to do with your life, and just walk us through some of your career background leading up to the work you're doing today.
Wow, that's a deep question. I grew up in Ohio, so Midwestern, and went to St. Ignatius High School. It was all Jesuit high school, all boys, and they used to have they still do. The phrase there is "men for others." So I think from early on, there was this overall sense that giving back was part of your responsibility to society anyway. I went from St. Ignatius to Fordham University in the Bronx, went to college there. And then coming out, the first job out of school, I was with Gallo Wine, and worked Long Island, Bronx, Queens territories. And that's kind of how it all started. And I got into basically consumer products / retail. Which was fascinating in that what you learned is that consumers really are the boss. In the end, the consumer makes the decision, and they usually make the decision at point of purchase. No matter how much marketing you do, they get to choose, do they put your product in their basket, whether that's in a store or whether that's on Amazon or Chewy.com or what have you. And that's still true today, that the consumer is the boss. And I think throughout my career from Gallo, I then went to Abbott Labs. Then I went on to Gillette. Then I was at Phillips and then Zarbee's. Through all of that, there was a growing desire, I think, is not to just build great businesses, but how do you build great businesses and give a little bit back to the greater good. And that stuck with me. And I think each one of those companies did that, in different ways. Gillette had a big United Way type of program, which we all participated in, which I think was fantastic. But it wasn't until I got to Zarbee's when I was the actual CEO and the decision maker to say, how can we do that? And I'd say, at Zarbee's, we built a great business. And I think we made a great product. Very, very proud that we sold that to Johnson & Johnson. I think what they saw was that we were giving moms, parents, an opportunity to buy a product that was efficacious, that was also with less chemicals and better for you, which was great. But I still left there with a hunger to say, on my next gig, how do we take it to the next step further, where we're actually doing good for your fellow man? And that's kind of how the idea of Canidae came to be, in terms of how do we make great pet food, but at the same time leave society a little bit better than it is as a result of our work.
Love that. Well, thank you for giving us that snapshot of your career and how you've transitioned and what you've gone through to end up where you are right now and what that mission and that focus is. And we're going to be talking certainly more about that because that becomes very relevant and very important to the work that you're doing today. I did want to ask you, as you look over the span of your career to this point, what's been the most pivotal moment in your career?
Wow, that's a great question. I think ultimately, the biggest eye opener, the aha moment, is I had a boss that really impressed upon me that your employees are what make good products and the good marketing schemes. Great companies aren't a mistake. They are made because you've got really engaged employees that are all in on the mission. If you look at the great brands, the ones that are consistently great year after year after year, it's because their employee base is all in. Pat Riley used to have a phrase that says, you're either in or you're out. There's no life in between. And I think those companies that are able to really curate an employee base that really feels they have a purpose, they're valued, they're taken care of. Those are the companies that really do great work year after year. You see companies that have a flash in the pan from now and then, but the ones that are consistently good. And I think the aha moment was take care of your employees and they will build a great business. And so no matter what job it's been since I've been in management, it's been how do I do best by my employees? And that just doesn't mean in terms of pay. It could be in terms of coaching, development, other types of benefits that you can provide them that they feel that we've got their best interest. Because at the end of the day, employees can go work wherever they want. And the good ones, the ones that really can do dramatic things for your business in terms of the positive, are the ones you really want to keep.
Wow. Very powerful words there. Now, all of you that are listening right now, please make sure that you're taking notes here because there's going to be plenty of amazing content that's going to be shared here through experiences that Bret has through transitioning into his current role and their mission and focus and how they execute on that every day. So please do take notes. We'll be talking more about how you can get involved and how you can share your comments and what you've learned in this episode once we get to the end of the conversation. So, Bret, what words would you use to describe yourself?
People-oriented. If I said I'm really good at any one thing, it's getting different personalities to work well together. I'm certainly not the smartest guy, sitting at the table, but what I'm able to do is listen generously, to listen to understand what people have to say versus trying to develop my retort back, and be able to think about, all right, where's the commonality in terms of how are we going to bring all these great talents together to do good. I think that's my secret sauce in terms of why I think I've been successful. If I think about all the work and the success that I've enjoyed, it's always been because I've been surrounded by great people who've been able to work really well together. And that's where the magic happens. And I think I'm the grease that puts in between the cogs. But certainly I've been surrounded by super, super talented folks. And I just kind of help them collaborate a little bit better to get the best out of everyone.
Perfect. Well, you made a comment a few minutes ago about coaching and developing others, and such an important point to be made in being able to build a solid team, being able to pull the greatness out of others that already have it within them, right? But need that coaching and that mentorship and that leadership that you provide. That's excellent. So I'm curious, what is one thing that would surprise us to learn about you?
I think something that would surprise a lot of people is that how I got here is because I had some great coaches of my own, and some really awesome mentors. Going back to my time at Gillette, I don't know, I was in my 30s. I thought I had it all figured out. I had a pretty big ego. I was, rapidly rising star with getting lots more responsibility and scope. And, I kind of hit this wall, and I had a mentor who said, I think you should do a 360 assessment. We're going to throw a survey out to your colleagues, to people that you report to, and to people that report to you. And it was a pretty robust process. And when I got that back, I was in tears. It was super, super humbling in terms of how I thought I was perceived. No matter all my good intent, how I landed with others wasn't always great. And you get a decision. You either embrace it and say, this is true, either though I don't like it, or you say, no, I'm going to go do something else. And I remember sharing it with my wife at the time. And she said, yeah, you could quit and go do something else, but this is a gift. And that was a real mind-blowing experience to say, here's my wife, who might be my biggest fan, who's saying, hey, you got to go embrace this really tough feedback. And they gave me a coach. I started working with a tool called the Enneagram, which is all about, there's 9 different personalities. Any one of the 9 personalities that could be at their best, some form of Gandhi, and at their worst, some form of Attila the Hun, and really work with that tool in terms of how do I show up in others? How do I really land with other people? It was tremendous, and really embraced that work. Went on and brought that tool to Phillips when I was there, and then actually brought it to Zarbee's, and I've actually now brought it to Canidae.
Excellent.
But I think the thing that's surprising is that you don't just, all of us are a work in progress. And even to this day, I don't have it all figured out. You stub your toe every day, you learn. And I think if you can be humble and take those as learning moments and have a spirit of continuous learning and continuous improvement, I think that's the secret sauce.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and talk about having perspective, especially when you're listening for feedback and listening to what others are saying, and the way that, as you mentioned, the way that you land with them. We have our own perceptions of how we show up to the world, but what really is important is, what do others think? Those that I'm engaging with, those that are important to me, those that are on my team. So
I think that's right. I think one of the things that sometimes the people that rub us the wrong way, we sometimes jump to the conclusion that they have ill intent, but that's not really the case. Usually what drives bad behavior is stress, frustration, something going on in their personal lives. There's that old saying that says, if everybody threw all their problems in the center of a circle, you would grab yours back probably pretty quickly. And I think we don't really appreciate, just especially during COVID, just how it's affected everyone, and to have a little bit of empathy for that, and to really approach others with a sense of curiosity versus, I think, what's our kind of default nature is judgment. And that's really, really hard. It's very hard for me to do, but I think it's something I try to be conscious of. It gets you a lot further. You get to know people a lot better. And I think if you just look at society today, I think we all could practice that a little bit more. We'd be a little bit further along.
Truth, and very well said. So Scott Whipple and John Gordon founded Canidae 25 years ago in 1996, I believe. So what have been some of the most notable changes to the company since its founding? And then let's look at the other side of that coin. What hasn't changed?
Yeah. So I'd start with the other side of the coin first, Jay, because I think that's the most important. What has not changed has been the commitment to really great quality food. So the way Scott and John started, they owned their own farm and feed store. And they're buying all kinds of food, horse feed, goat feed, whatever, and dog food. And, they had a lot of vendors come in selling them food, and they came to them and they said, I think we can make a better food. They're looking at the ingredient decks. They're saying, I think we can do it better, and went out and got with a vet and created some formulations for Canidae that are still alive today. So what's never changed or will never change is this super, commitment to high quality, nutrient dense food for pets. And that's kind of where that's table stakes in the category. I mean, if you're going to go buy a car and you say, hey, what are the best cars out there? People would say, oh, Porsche, Audi, BMW. There'd be a selection, Mercedes. There'd be a selection of cars that you would say are high quality. And then there's others. Canidae will always be in that very, very select set. What has changed, I think there's one other thing that has not changed. The other thing that has not changed is the commitment to the pet specialty channel. Today we're omni-channel. You can buy things on Amazon, you can buy them at Kroger, you can buy them at Target, Walmart, and pet specialty. And we've made the choice to stay in pet specialty. So Petco, PetSmart, the independent channel, that pet store on the corner, that's who we're really committed to. We're not in Walmart. We don't plan to be in Walmart. We're not in Target. We're not in food, drug, and mass. That's not our game. And the reason for that, because you'd say, wow, is that a good business decision? Because there's so much business out there to be had, is that we fundamentally believe that when you're buying food for your pet, it's a very personal choice and you want to be educated. Those stores educate you on the food. Whether it's Canidae or another brand, they're going to be able to take you the time to walk you through what's in the food, what's the best thing for your pet. That's where we want to be associated versus a transactional relationship, which you're going to have in the big box stores where there's the food and you're just letting the marketing drive the consumer decision, which obviously we do marketing as well. But having that hands-on approach, I think is really important. The analogy I use is, you still go to an independent bookstore, you go there for a reason. You get to peruse the books, you get to see, you get to feel it, you get to touch it. Yeah, you can buy the book on Amazon, but to be in that store and have that experience with the store shop owner is very, very different and much more intimate. That's what has not changed. What has changed is the company that Scott and John built got to a certain size, but to scale it to be bigger, you need to look at, all right, what processes, what systems, what tools do you need in place to allow that to happen where the company doesn't implode? We have a saying. I come from obviously some very large manufacturing companies, as do many of my colleagues. And we say, we want to take the best from those big companies. I mean, there's a reason Johnson & Johnson or Gillette or Procter & Gamble are big. They're very successful for a reason. Good systems, good human resource rules, good processes. And we want to take all that. What we don't want to take from those big companies is slow bureaucracy, not agile. So we're taking the best from the big companies, but then we're trying to stay small, agile, flexible, innovative, entrepreneurial. And that's where our magic is as Canidae. And I think if we can do both, I think we can have a lot of success doing so. And being true to who we started from, which is great food and committed to the specialty channel.
Fantastic. So tell us, when you were in conversations about coming on board with Canidae, how long did it take you to make your decision? What was the ultimate decision based on? And what was one of the first or second things that you did when you took on the role of CEO?
Yeah, I would, leaving Zarbee's, when you do these types of projects, it's not only labor love, but it's exhausting to build a company. So we had just finished Zarbee's, sold it to J&J. I wanted to make sure that transitioned well. That was my baby. I still can go into a CVS or a Target and see my brand there, and it's great. And it's doing really, really well, which is really gratifying because we built something that is going to be around forever. So I feel really good about that. It just so happened, and timing's everything, is that El Catterton, which has a big stake in Canidae, had just bought Canidae in that late 2018 from Scott and John, and needed a CEO. And they're like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, I want to finish this with J&J to make sure the transition goes, but 2019, I think I could join." And started looking at it. There was one thing that really struck me, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but Canidae and Zarbee's have a ton in common. And what's really in common is at Zarbee's, it was all about a parent's decision to buy a great quality product for their baby or their child. The whole thing was around no chemicals, we're safe, but we're also effective. We're natural. When you start thinking about a decision a pet parent makes for their baby, their fur baby, it's exactly the same. It's very much an emotional decision. They want the best for their pet. And when you can see that consumer emotional, that engagement in the product and that emotional attachment to their baby, then you got a real opportunity to educate them on what your point of difference is. There's a lot of categories you might buy. You just buy. You don't think about it. It's product in a box or product in a bag, whatever that is. When it comes to buying something for someone you love and really care about, there's a whole bunch more decision-making that goes into it and thought that goes into it. And those are categories I like because it means the consumer is engaged enough that you can bring them along on your journey and help educate them. And that really struck me that there was a lot of similarities between Zarbee's and the Zarbee's consumer and the Canidae consumer. So that was point one. Point two was pet adoption is huge. During COVID, we saw a huge and even a bigger spike in terms of just the amount of adoptions. And it's sort of recession proof. I mean, dogs have to eat. Even when, things aren't going so well, you have to get food for your dog. So I like that in the category. And the third thing that really struck me about the category that was very similar to Zarbee's, when I went to Zarbee's and really looked at the shelf, it was all the big players, all the big pharmaceutical players. And they were doing the same thing they'd done since the 50s. Bottle in a box, bottle in a box, bottle in a box. And it was all about efficacious, all their trials, what the product did. Not, where do my products come from? Not the ingredients in the product. And when I looked at pet, you've got Mars, General Mills, Colgate, Nestle, all giant corporations. And that's food in a bag, food in a bag, food in a bag. And what I saw was there was a real opportunity to disrupt the channel, to do things differently. And, for the first 2 years, we've spent a lot of time building the foundation, but we're just getting started. And we just launched our first, what I call real meaningful innovation to the category this month, which is called Sustain. And I can go into it or we can talk more about it, but it's different in terms of the ingredients. It's different in terms of the bag. And it's our first, not last, because we have many innovations to come, but disruptive new product coming into the category that has never been seen before, which I think is going to be really good for the pet. They're going to get a damn good food, really good for the pet parent because they can feel good about what they're feeding their pet, and good for our planet, which is the mission that we're on.
Love it. And we're going to come back to that because
Sure.
I want to ask you about the announcement that you made last month and the partnership that you've formed there and how that is impacted through social media, et cetera. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But I think it's important that we also go to the mission that Canidae has, and also talking about the cycle of goodness. So please share with us what the cycle of goodness is, tie that to your mission, and why is that so incredibly important?
Yeah. So when I left Zarbee's, and again, it's part of the Canidae decision, but the idea was, can we make a great business that also gives back? It goes back to what we were talking about, men for others, and what I'd seen other corporations do on large scale. And when we looked at the Canidae business and pet category in particular, it seemed like there was a really big opportunity to bring goodness in terms of, yes, food. So if you put your back to the TV and just turned on the TV and just listen to ongoing commercials for pet food, you'll hear a lot of the same messages. In fact, it's hard sometimes to discern one company from the other. They're all talking about their ingredients. That's kind of the basic meat and potatoes advertising that happens in the category. And we make damn good food. So I felt good about that. But what wasn't being talked about, where does the food come from? What's the impact on the pet? What's the impact on the planet? Does anybody even know what's happening? As a statistic, in the US alone, over 500 million bags of food are purchased. Those bags are made basically from plastic, but it's not recyclable plastic. You can't take when your bag is empty, you can't take it to the curb and put it with your recyclables. It's not that kind of, it's not ready for that type of recycling. You can only do commercial grade recycling, which has to go through a special company, through a special supply chain. Very, very hard for the consumer to get that product recycled. They're number 7 on the scale of environmental friendliness, which is 7 being the worst. So those 500 million bags end up in landfills every year in the United States alone. And we saw that as a big opportunity. So as we started to look at the problem, we said, all right, how do we tackle the packaging? So that's good for the planet. How do we tackle the food though as well? Because we want, the ingredients we use, but how do you source the proteins? And Sustain's our first chance to get, cage-free chicken, wild-caught salmon, and the vegetables that we're getting are coming from regenerative farming. Which regenerative farming done a lot with robotics. It's low touch and it's much, much better for the soil. And oh, by the way, the product, the vegetables that are produced are much more nutrient dense because of less soil erosion and less touch. And so we saw this opportunity, said, wow, that's the cycle of goodness. Good for the pets getting a great food, good for pet parents because emotionally they want to give the very best food to their pet parent, to their pet fur babies. And then lastly, for the planet, because for every purchase that someone makes of Sustain, they're doing something good. Like they can feel good. I gave something good for my pet, but I'm also doing good for my fellow man and this finite resource called Earth that we all share. And that's the cycle of goodness, pet, parent, and the planet. And we're just getting started. I mean, look, if there's a brand that I admire greatly, which would be Patagonia, they've been on the journey for a long, long time, but even they would admit we are not where we want to be. I mean, the Worn Wear program, which is fantastic, and you can bring in your old clothes. They've, obviously, I think they're leading in the industry, but they had to start somewhere. And I think what I'm looking to do is to start somewhere. And if we can get consumers to rally around this idea, that gives us more oxygen to do more and to do more and to do more. And I think that's a big differentiation. You don't have to give up any quality in terms of the food you're feeding, but when you purchase a Canidae bag, you can do good for your fellow man.
Love it. So let's talk about the good for the people in your business. So you lead a group of 150 people in 2 different locations. Talk about the people for a moment and what makes working at Canidae a different experience than working anywhere else. Talk about that ethos and that culture that's created there.
Yeah, I would say, look, it's a work in progress, right? People always have this kind of thinking that if you think about your ethos or your culture, that it should be comes from the top of the mountain, like, the 10 Commandments, and then everybody kind of gets on it. I'm sure you've been in many organizations and they have the big credo on the wall, the mission statement, and you ask 5 people and no one even knows what it says because they don't live it. It's just words on a wall or words on a page. And what we're trying to do at Canidae is to make it livable. And I think that's the big point, is how do we live and how do we behave and how do we act with each other? That should come out in how we present our brand to the rest of the world. There's a great book, I don't know if you've ever read it, from Dan Brown called Boys in the Boat. It's about the 1936 Olympic team. Huge fan. Everybody that joins Canidae gets that book on their first day. And the reason is that we're really about low ego. And because this is a team sport. One, you have to buy into the mission. We want to do good. But you also have to buy into the mission that, look, everyone's interested in their career. We think about individualism and we all want to get promoted. We all want to make more money. I get it. I'm all about that. That said, at Canidae, you can do all that, but you can't do it without everyone around you. So when you think about our culture and you think about that crew boat, there's no motor, there's no sail. The boat only goes if the oars are in the water and everyone's rowing. So you have to, one, work really hard at Canidae. I'm not ashamed to say it. People work very hard, and ultimately, I think that's our point of difference from work hard. But you can't work in that boat and row like a maniac, and everybody else is like can't catch up to you. You have to row in sync with the person in front of you and the person in back of you, so the boat goes straight and fast. So this idea of collaboration, and when you come back to development and the whole thing I talked about the Enneagram, the idea is that everyone is being charged with their own personal development. So we bring the Enneagram to the broader organization. A number of our people leaders have a coach. And the idea is I do my personal development work, not for myself, but for you. Because if I can be a better colleague to you, my job is to help support you to be successful. So that's our culture. It's really about team. And I think what makes it different is that we hold each other accountable. We are able to have courageous conversations with one another, and all in the spirit of my responsibility is to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then we all succeed. And that doesn't mean, there isn't individuals, people that want to get promoted. Yes, absolutely. But not in the face of other people winning, because the company's lean And if we want to win, we all got to work together. And that's the ethos we're trying to build. But at the end of the day, success is going to be, does everybody embrace it? Because, if you get to the water cooler and you're at the water cooler and someone's complaining, because, people are habitual complainers. That's what we like to do. And someone's complaining about something about Canidae, and that's certainly happening. That happens, any company. And you're listening, you have one of three avenues to you. One, you join in and commiserate, because that's what we like to do. Or two, you listen, but you don't say anything and you walk away and you go back to your desk. Or three, what we would expect you to do as an employee of Canidae is to listen and then provide a different perspective to help that person see maybe a different view. That's leadership. And we say everyone here is a chief cultural officer. No matter where you sit, no matter what your title, the culture is owned by all of us. And we'll see how it goes, Jay. To be perfectly honest with you, it's a work in progress. It's a piece of clay. And it's evolving. And certainly COVID was hard because we're all apart. But now as we start coming back together in the office, it'll be interesting to see how it gets curated and what the employees wanted to do. And yes, I'll try to help steer, and so will the management team, but ultimately it'll be the employees that decide.
Wow. So many great points made there. So as you look at how far you've come since the time that you joined the company and what's in front of you as you look at this as a work in progress, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you face right now? And what specific actions are you taking to overcome them?
Yeah, by any measure, this COVID and being separated has been the biggest challenge. People like connection. People like to be with other people. And I think us all managing via Zoom or via Teams, Microsoft Teams, has been really, really rough. At the beginning, it was kind of okay. We got on the calls. We're like, oh, I don't have to go in the office today. And I think everybody thought it was kind of novel. But what ended up happening was your day from 8 to 6 or whatever it was just meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And what wasn't happening was you're at the coffee machine and, hey, how are you doing? Or how are your kids? Or, hey, did you hear about the project? Oh, I didn't hear about that, but you know what? I can do that. All that stuff that happens in an office environment wasn't happening. And what you saw, or what we all experienced, I think, was some sort of, though we were talking to each other in these group meetings all day long, a feeling of isolation and actually disconnected to what we were actually trying to build as a team. I'm super proud that, we've launched this product line called Sustain despite COVID and all being apart. But I would tell you, it's been super challenging. And I think us now going back to the office, and I do believe in the office, but that's going to be a challenge in itself in terms of, all right, how do we bring people back? Because we just all worked for a year, not in an office. And I really have a lot of empathy for these moms who are all working, and to say, how do we give them a little bit more flexibility for their lives? Or these parents that have dual parents that are both working, how do we give them a little bit more flexibility so we can get a little bit of that office environment, that connectivity back, while at the same time giving them a little more flexibility so that they can tend to their children or tend to other needs. And so what we're going to do, Jay, is we're going to be coming back to the office 3 days a week, full time. And then 2 days of the week, flex time, where if you want to be in the office, great. But if you need to work from home those days because you don't have a babysitter, you don't have a nanny, or your kid doesn't have daycare, or whatever that might be, that's okay too. So we're trying to really address that. During COVID, I think our HR group did a really nice job trying to keep people connected. Is we did cultural cooking. So someone would say, I got a recipe, 6 o'clock at night, everybody gets on. A lot of adult beverages, and then we'd cook together. We've done exercise classes together. We've tried a couple different things to bring people together. I'd say they were all well appreciated, but nothing's going to replace being together. And I think we're all really looking forward to that.
Excellent. I love the flexible idea and being able to create an environment where people can continue to thrive, where they can show up yet they also have some flexibility to be able to work, still make the connections, but take care of the important things that need to be taken care of in their
Right.
lives.
I think, I really expect, especially, and we talk about working parents, but, even the millennials that work, a lot of them have their own apartments and been sitting alone for a year. And I think that was really rough. You come from college or whatever, and you were in a dorm, and now you're alone in your apartment and there's no people. I think that was really rough on some.
Yes.
And I think the challenge, we're going to see how it goes. It's a little bit of an experiment. I've never done it before. I've always worked in an office my entire career. And I think we're going to see, what I'm hoping is that people really appreciate it. And, my sense is when you do right by your employees, they always give you a little bit more. I think people are well-intended by nature, and we're going to grant a lot of trust that, hey, let's make this experiment work, because it makes a lot of sense, but we've never done it before. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Beautiful. Forging new ground.
That's correct.
Fantastic. So since this has been brought up a couple times, talking about Canidae Sustain. So Canidae announced in, I believe it was April, a celebrity partnership with Catherine Schwarzenegger-Pratt. I believe you have two other celebrities that are also part of this. And that was all tied to the launch and the campaign around this new eco-friendly pet food line. So share with us a bit about Sustain, how that partnership came about, and the reason why Canidae felt that was important to form a strategic partnership with these celebrities.
No, I think, look, there's lots of ways to go to market with a new product. I think for us, and it kind of ties back to that whole pet specialty explanation I gave around high touch and personal touch, is that when you can find the right celebrities that believe in what you're doing, sometimes they're gonna, or oftentimes I should say, can tell a better story about why they're feeding their dog our product versus us doing, call it a big TVC, spot, or some kind of video that you would see. We've liked telling stories, and I think when you can tell stories through personal experience, I think it's that much more powerful. And so, with all of our celebrities, it's a chance that they've got obviously a lot of followers who respect what they do, and we feel really super grateful and humbled that they love our food and they're willing to buy our food and feed it to their own pets who are, their pride and joy, and then share that with their communities. And that was really important. I think this idea of authenticity gives us a sense of credibility that, hey, Canidae makes a really good food, and these celebrities endorse it. And I think at the end of the day, we often, I think we found that also at Zarbee's, we often find that what other people say when they endorse a product kind of resonates with us. At Zarbee's, it was all about, we had pediatricians that were recommending our product, and people were like, well, if they're recommending the product and they're a doctor, then how, it's got to be good. And I think when you see people who really love their pets, who are passionate about the pets, each one of our celebrities that we did choose are passionate about their pets, that they were willing to partner with us, I think says a lot. And again, it's the reason why we want to stay in the pet specialty channels, because those people really are in that business because they love pets. I mean, you're not going to say, oh, I'm going to go open a pets food store only because I want to make money. You just have a real passion for the category, and you being able to talk about the brands that are in your store and why they're important and why you carry them to consumers that come in your store. I think that's really, really important. And I think people really appreciate that. So that's why we did that. And I think, it's a little bit different because there's nothing like this product in the market. So it does require an education. You can't just put it out and just say, okay, it's good food. No, you got to talk about, hey, the proteins are ethically sourced. You got to talk about the vegetables are from regenerative farming. You got to talk about the bag. Each bag has 4-liter bottles of plastic, recycled plastic in it, which is different than any bag on the shelf. There's nothing like that in the category. It's a recycled bag. So that's a very complicated story that you can't really do in a TV commercial. And to have celebrities talk about it with passion, I think was the best avenue to do that.
Wonderful. And as you mentioned before, this is the first initiative of its
Correct.
kind, but there are more to come. So it'll be exciting to see what direction you and your team decide to take and what's going to be coming down the pike.
That's correct. I think we look at it from three different angles. There's the food, there's the packaging, and then there's the supply chain, how the food gets there. All three are different. We're going to tackle all three vehicles because we think all three can make a difference. And at the end of the day, if consumers opt in, then all of us together can make a really big difference. And, my hope, honestly, as a disruptor in this category, as a very small brand, is that if we do it, the big brands will take notice and then they'll get on board. And if they get on board, then wow, then we've really got, and they start doing things that are more sustainable, then that's a big impact you can make. The category is giant. I mean, it's $30 billion category, Jay. There's plenty of room for all of us to play. And I think if little Canidae can get the big guys to notice and start to change some of the ways they go to market in terms of the product and the bag and everything else, that would be really rewarding. And would make a massive positive change for all of us.
That would be amazing. And it seems like many of the larger companies, they start to pay attention when they're losing market share.
That's correct. That's correct. So I'm hoping Canidae, can gain a lot of market share for sure. But the same thing was at Zarbee's. I mean, if you go into the cough cold section today and see how many natural remedies there are now, Zarbee's was the pioneer there. Now everybody's got them. And I think that's what happens. They start to say, wow, I'm losing a little market share. So let's knock on wood and hope that happens. That would be good for Canidae for sure. But I think when you think about, doing good for others, that would be really good for the planet.
Absolutely. So you had referenced the importance of mentors earlier on. So we know that mentors can help shape our lives and our careers. Who are 1 to 2 mentors, living or dead, who've inspired you and have had an impact on your life and how you show up to the world today?
Wow. I've had a number of great mentors along the way. My first boss, Harvey Goodman at Abbott Labs, if I think about why he was a great mentor, is that he taught me, instead of managing me by my tasks, he managed me by my competencies, which was very different than I've ever been managed before. But the idea of crafting and molding me around competencies and knowing that if you took the time to do that my work would improve anyway, or would improve as a result, was a big investment in time. It's very easy for a manager just to focus on tasks. Get this done, get this done. He focused all of his time on the how. Like, how do you show up? How do you sell? Are you organized? Which takes a lot longer because the direct impact takes longer. But that really resonated with me. I worked for him for 5 years, and that was a big change for me personally, and was how I started to manage when I got the opportunity. My second big mentor was Fred Howard. He was my boss multiple times at Gillette, and Fred just had great integrity and always did the right thing even when it was hard. And I think that has really served me well in business, whether it's treating people with respect or even in business negotiations. There were many times in my career where I wanted the volume, but it wasn't right for the business, and say, I'm sorry, we can't do it. And that always stung really, really hard in the moment.
Oh, yeah.
But longer term, it was always the right thing to do. That really, really played out for me in a big way. And then I think in general, I don't know if you would call them mentors, but I've been really fortunate to work with some really, really special people that are my colleagues, but I learn from them every day. I've got a gentleman on my team, head of strategy, ex-McKinsey, Peter Margettis, maybe the smartest guy I know, teaches me something every day. I've got, Dana Paris, who did OGX, sold OGX to J&J, super, super smart. Wally Shaw, who's in charge of my operations team, super humble guy, just does the right thing every day and grinds it out. And I think being surrounded by people that are better than you, and you're learning from each day, I think that's really, really helped me. And it's why I like to work. You don't stop learning. I think when you stop learning, you start dying. And I think the folks that I've surrounded myself on my team not only are super smart business people, but just really, really good people. And I think that keeps me really grounded.
Wow, that's outstanding. I love how even as the CEO of the company, you realize that surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you or perhaps better than you in certain areas, there's power in that. That's so important. And to always be open to learning, because as you know, the moment we think we know something, we block ourselves from being able to learn that thing. And so what an amazing mindset. And if more leaders had that same type of mindset and were focused on doing good things like your business is today, what a different world we would have. But you're setting a great example. So let's hope that that example continues to grow and that others have visibility around it and want to learn how they can improve as well. So I think it's fantastic. So before I ask my final question to you, what overarching message would you like to leave our audience with?
I'd love to pitch Canidae to you and say, hey, please go buy Canidae because I do think it's a great food and we're going to make a big difference. But I think, in respect to your audience, I would say this is that, if there was one piece of advice I had for anyone, it's just people make companies go. And, you get a lot more enjoyment when you're working with people that are like-minded. And, we take a really long look when we hire a candidate to make sure people are like-minded in terms of their values, in terms of how they want to work together. Work should be fun. I always tell my team is if, when it stops being fun or you have that pause moment before you get out of your car and you walk into the office, come see me. I'll help you find a new job. Life's just too short. We should love what you do. Work shouldn't, we don't live to work. That's not how it's supposed to go. And, I think we work so we can really live. And if you really love what you're doing and you can learn and you're growing, then that's the big message. And, I've got two boys graduating college right now. And I told them they're both, super nervous about finding a job and the market's pretty tough. And I just said, look, that first job, I said, just make sure that you really like the people you're working with, because whatever you do, you're going to learn and grow. And your first job's not going to be your career. That's not how it goes. Certainly wasn't mine. And I just think if there is a piece of advice, just like people matter. And if you can take care of your people and you're fair, it doesn't mean we don't care about performance, because we do. But if you're fair and you take care of people and you invest in them, they will pay it back in spades. And I think that's been my experience. And I like building teams, because if you build really good teams, the business magically happens.
Incredible. What a wonderful message. And your two boys are very fortunate. I love that. That's awesome. So we will certainly link to your LinkedIn profile as well as your company's website. Are there any other areas that we can connect with you that we should put in the show notes?
Maybe our Facebook page would be good. But other than that, no, I think that's it.
Very good. We will do that. So here is my final question to you. So what are you adding or eliminating from your life to live more fulfilled and with greater purpose?
I am adding reading a book a month. So that's that was my New Year's resolution this year. I've moved from running, or when I'm a big runner, with music, to now I'm listening to podcasts and books. So that's been really game changing. I've really, really enjoyed that. So I'm adding that. And I think, look, I can be very verbose, as this interview would attest to. I'm trying to listen more generously. I'm a natural speaker. I like to talk, but I think you don't learn a lot when you're speaking. So trying to listen a little bit more generously, especially now. I think there's just a lot of noise in general in society today. I've got a very young team. They've got lots of thoughts and opinions, and really just trying to listen and meet them where they are. I don't have a magic wand to fix everything, but I think sometimes people just want to be heard, to be valued. And I'm really trying to practice that a little bit more in 2021. And hopefully that'll serve me well. And I'll hopefully learn quite a bit along the way.
Fantastic. So in terms of podcasts, books, what's queued up right now? What book are you listening to?
So I don't know if you ever heard it. It's the book is called Musashi. So Jimmy Chin, who's a famous photographer, outdoor photographer, he did Free Solo with, he filmed that movie.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of his. Anyway, his favorite book is Musashi. So I'm like, all right, if it's a favorite book, I'll check it out. It's about a samurai in the 1600s. And the interesting thing is that in his pursuit to become the best warrior, he learns how to be the best man. And it becomes much more philosophical as the book moves along in his pursuit of the way and finding Zen. Awesome book, super long. I'm in now book 6 of the book, but I am really enjoying it, and might be one of the best books I've ever read.
Wow. Well, I'm definitely going to have to check that out. That piques my curiosity, and it sounds like it's right in my wheelhouse. Fantastic. Well, Bret, thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I'm grateful for you. I love this conversation, and I'm so excited about what you're doing and what you're building with your team and with your mission and with your business. So keep being that shining light and keep doing the good things and setting the right kind of examples. And thank you again so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to hearing the podcast.
Absolutely. You will when you're on one of those runs.
Absolutely. I absolutely will. Although a little
fantastic.
Weird to listen to myself, but yes, I will listen for sure.
That's okay. You never know what you learn when you listen to yourself, right?
For sure.
So for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and listening. And please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. We would love to hear 1 or 2 key takeaways that resonated with you in this particular episode. So please do that. And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Jay Shear Business Consulting can build a solid foundation for your service-based business, all you have to do is visit jshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Buy a bag of Canidae Pet Food. Your pet will be happy, you'll be happy, and the environment will be happy. And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Business consultant.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.